in Spanish we call it rebote. You go on a diet, stop eating, lose weight, then you start eating again, gain that weight or more. And that is so frustrating. But how is that related to muscle?
I should mention that why does skeletal muscle mass become unhealthy? I think there are two primary things that happen when we're inactive. Number one, it increases insulin resistance. Insulin is less effective. You will ultimately see higher levels of blood glucose. So insulin resistance, insulin is a peptide hormone that is released from the pancreas, and you don't want to depend on it. You don't want a ton of it. I think that it is a fail-safe mechanism and should only be used when needed, for example. We should not be dependent on, driving our insulin up all the time by eating a bunch of carbohydrates. And then second is when we are sedentary, it's kind of like a swamp. Well, if you think about your muscle like a lake or a stream, it has to have movement. And when you don't exercise your muscle, it becomes very stagnant. And this, I think, is the second problem that happens with not moving enough.
How do we know if our skeletal muscle, it's healthy, it's enough? What is the percentage? How can I measure it as well?
It's a great question. And I think that it highlights one of our core fundamental challenges. We don't know how much muscle mass would be optimal for someone. Obviously, I would say the more muscle mass that you can have, the better. It's amazing if it's more than 50% your body weight, or at least 50% your body weight. That's a great. How we typically measure skeletal muscle mass would be a DEXA or an in-body. And frankly, what I think is important is just that you're doing it. You should measure. You should know what you weigh. You should know a baseline. You could use an in-body or bioimpedance. The other thing is, you asked a really smart question, and that question was, how do we know that our muscle is healthy? And that can also be reflective in blood work. We have heard about metabolic syndrome, which is elevated levels of triglyceride, elevated levels of blood pressure, increase in insulin, increase in glucose. All of the things that define metabolic syndrome don't indicate body fat. They indicate muscle health. And that is really, really interesting.
Let's get into the most exciting part of this. How do we build it?
Latin America, there is something very fascinating. Genetic predisposition for diabetes is huge. Also, PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, the number one cause of infertility. It seems like, depending on where someone is from, those Hispanic descent are more, again, it depends on where, but are more susceptible. And I don't know if you've heard that or if you've seen it, but there are real genetic predispositions for the impact of elevated levels of insulin and glucose and insulin resistance and its effect on fertility.